You want Philly?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sanders patiently running. Sanders good cut. And another block. Sanders still going inside the 40.
NFC East champs, divisional champs, NFC champs, and world champs.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Kelly Green Hour. It has been a while. This has been one of, if not the most or the quietest off seasons I can remember in a long time. Yes, there's a lot of talk about the quarterback position and some position battles, but usually when there's no news, it's good news. But we want some news so we can come to you live. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, it's been a while, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. It's been nice to get some time off, and the painted lines have done a hell of a job. If we had went on the air, we would have been repeating a lot of the same stuff that they were repeating. So they've done a hell of a job of talking about all the key things that needed to be talked about and all the controversial back and forth topics that needed to be addressed. So now we're back, and I'm excited to be back, and I'm excited that we're 2 weeks away from training camp starting.
Less than 2 weeks away.
Less than 2 weeks. Like this is it. Here we go. And this is one of my favorite times of the year because we do our pre-training camp depth chart dive-ins, and we kind of try and we let people know who we think is going to make the depth chart based off of what is there right now. Obviously, there's always the wrenches thrown into them when Howie decides to sign some other veteran or some crazy stuff goes down, injuries and so on and so forth. But I mean, I'm just glad to be able to talk football and to be back at it. I mean, I know it's been 4 weeks, but like you said, it has been by far the quietest 4 weeks. Like, we've been doing this for this is like our fourth off season. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we could ever take 4 weeks and literally have nothing happen in 4 weeks. Literally nothing. No signings. It's so quiet that the only thing that's happening in Eagle Land is reports about Jalen Hurts not doing well in practices that aren't even open to the media. So
yeah, we'll talk about that because obviously that's one snippet, like maybe even the first practice with brand new receivers that report or somebody was talking about that report. But yeah, we're going to dive into the offensive depth chart today. Next week, the defensive depth chart and special teams, but special teams is kind of pretty much set. I wish they would bring a punter in, but that's a different story for a different day. Dave McNulty commented, "Good to see you guys again." Dave, man, we know it's been a while. Definitely good to hear.
This is it. Like from here on out, we're here for the next what are we talking, like 25, 26 weeks?
So, yeah, hopefully longer. There's high expectations on this team. The only issue with the high expectations on the Eagles is usually when there are high expectations, they fall short. Let's hope it doesn't happen. Obviously, while this coaching staff was together all of last year and exceeded expectations, they're still a young coaching staff. Besides Jeff Stoutland, who on the coaching staff has actually gone who's had to meet these expectations? Stoutland was been here since when did Chip start? 2014?
Mm-hmm. Somewhere around there.
Chip, or 2013, because I think 2012 may have been Andy's last year. But yeah, Stoutland has been here close to 10 years. And obviously, the Super Bowl, being coaching on the Super Bowl team, and then the year after the Super Bowl when expectations are really high, it's going to be interesting to see how this coaching staff, how this team is able to come together. Yeah, they have veterans. They have Jason Kelsey. They have Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. But how many times is it that an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman is that guy that's going to be the leader? It was always Brian Dawkins, and it was always Malcolm Jenkins. It's always somebody at a skill. And I don't understand why. I don't know why. I don't know why it is that, but it's usually somebody at a skill position. So it'll be interesting to see how this team comes together. There's a lot of young guys, and I think a lot of the talk throughout the offseason is because this team brought in A.J. Brown, Jordan Davis, N'Kobe Dean. Like, they got a lot of young guys. Whatever his name is, Tart. I can't remember. I never can say his first name. But that it would have been nice to see them on the field together. And we haven't seen that, which we're gonna really see if not having any on-field activities together is going to affect this team. Because if it doesn't, you can expect going forward, at least under Sirianni, they're not going to have an off season. It's going to be after the draft, OTAs. They're going to get 2 months off or whatever, and then we'll see you in training camp. So, and under Doug, the Eagles had a lot of injury issues. And it seemed like we talked about, especially that one year, in 16 games, they had 14 different offensive line combinations. Last year, the line was pretty healthy, besides
Driscoll and Brooks.
I mean, like, Mailata and Dickerson held down the left side, Kelsey at center, Johnson at right tackle, besides, his couple weeks, that he took off. But other than that, it was the right guard position. That was the issue. But the Eagles were relatively healthy last year, and it was finally nice to see that. But we'll see what happens going forward. Yeah, so before we get started, as always, you want to follow us on Twitter at the Kelly Green Hour. You can follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10 and follow me on Twitter at LJHarrell54. Follow the Painted Lines at the Painted Lines. Thank you to those that are following the stream right now. So we are going to get started, Connor. We're going to look at our pre-training camp depth chart, starting with the offensive side of the football. And we're going to start at quarterback. I'll let you go first. I think we'll probably have the same. I don't know if you have 2 or 3. I have 3. Probably the same guys here, unless obviously there's a move with the backup right now that could potentially be made. But who do you have at the quarterback position for the Eagles?
I want to say 2 because I want it to be 2. I think that they need those spots more urgently than carrying a third quarterback. The issue becomes if you move Carson Strong to your practice squad, he is getting picked up.
Well, if they call him, he's not even going to have a chance to go to the practice.
Yeah, exactly. He won't even make it through the waiver process. He will be acquired. So I think based on the amount of guaranteed money that they put into Carson Strong and barring anything, like you said, I think Howie's waiting for an injury. He's waiting for an injury at the quarterback position. The market's thin now. It's pretty much Jimmy Garoppolo and any other team's backup quarterback is all that's left out there to acquire. And Gardner Minshew is a really intriguing one that teams always seem to come knocking or seem to talk about because he can hold down the fort for you. But for me right now, it's Hurts, it's Minshew, and it's Strong. You can't let Strong go because he won't make it through any process. He won't make it back.
So I have the same 3. My only issue with Carson Strong is his knee issues, the knee situation. But it wouldn't shock me if Gardner Minshew did get traded, whether it's during training camp, preseason, or even up through the trade deadline in the NFL. So we'll see. Jalen Hurts is the clear-cut starter now, obviously, but I still don't think if the Eagles believe he's the answer going forward. And I kind of want to talk about quickly the Derek Gunn report. Now, obviously, he even mentioned it because I heard an interview he had on Ike's Reese, Johnny Marks and Ike Reese on WIP, and he said, "Look, it was just one practice. It was one snippet. He didn't get any reports before that or after that. Most likely after, because I'm pretty sure that was very, very early. And it wasn't with AJ Brown. I don't think it was with Devontae Smith. It was with all the young guys. It could have been with the Greg Wards, even Jalen Reagers, and even like Deion Kane and stuff like that. So when he said that in a 10-play series, 3 interceptions, or was it 3 sacks, 4 interceptions, and 3 touchdowns, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact term.
And I know a lot of people are like, well, how do you get sacked in 7-on-7? Well, if you don't get the ball out in a certain amount of time, if the coach says, look, you need to get the ball out in 6 seconds, if you don't get the ball out in 6 seconds, it's a sack. We're not saying it's a literal sack, and we know that Jalen likes to stretch the play. He likes to move around in the pocket. He'll use his legs. But I think the one thing we want to see from Jalen this year is not having to worry about using his legs. He needs to be able to read the defense, get rid of the ball, put the ball in a spot where the receiver can catch and run, or run and catch at simultaneously. It shouldn't be thrown behind a receiver or anything like that. And if that's what the coaches were practicing during that particular set that this person saw, okay, I understand where those numbers came from. But I also understand that Jalen Hurts is going to be somebody that's going to move the pocket. He's not going to be a stationary quarterback. So it will be tough to sack Jalen Hurts. I get that. But we also want to see, this isn't going to be a team that's going to want to run the football 60% of the time this year. No, we don't want to see that. You cannot win a Super Bowl being a running team. The Eagles are going to have to throw the football. If the Eagles come out this year and start 2-5 and Jalen Hurts is struggling, it would not shock me if Gardner Minshew gets a chance if he's here. So, you know, a lot of people are saying, yes, this is Jalen's year to prove it. We said the same thing last year, and they changed the offense because he proved he really couldn't throw. While he can throw the football, he proved that he wasn't able to. He wasn't more than a one-read run quarterback. We need to see something different. So that's what I'm going to say about that report on Jalen Hurts. What are your thoughts on that, Connor?
No, I agree. I mean, I think the big thing is, and in tweeting from the Kelly Greenhour account, it's that we want to see progress. Anything that's not progress is something that's going to upset the fan base. Is going to be something that really gets people going. And I understand AJ Brown was quick to jump up and defend him and post that tweet and whatever. You can go ahead and defend your quarterback, but we clearly want to see progress. They made a lot of moves to move this team forward and to put this team in a position to, at a minimum, host a home playoff game, win the NFC East. And after that, like, I don't think that this team was built with win the NFC East and that's it in mind. I think there's more to this, and they won a lot more. And we know Jalen Hurts is going to be ups and downs. That's the thing with the mobile quarterbacks. They're up, they're down. They're not like you said, they're not a stationary quarterback. They're not ones that can necessarily always read the defenses very well, because as soon as they get on the move, it doesn't really matter what they saw in the defense. They're looking for an open player. They're looking to make a positive gain out of the play. So that's what sometimes becomes the issue with Jalen Hurts is he can't keep his eyes downfield. He becomes mobile. He leaves the pocket and he starts looking for a way to make a positive gain on the play. And I mean, it all depends. Like, everybody has this different perception of what they want Jalen Hurts to be, what he needs to do, what he needs to become. To me, he needs to just be able to be good in the offense, sustain an offense, and they can continue to build around that. Nobody is saying he has to be Tom Brady. Nobody is saying he has to be any of these huge names. And the word that gets tossed around a lot is franchise quarterback. To me, franchise quarterback means so many different things to so many people and to so many franchises. We thought Carson Wentz was a franchise quarterback. That just didn't pan out. To me, it's that
injury hurt him, I think.
The injury hurt him a lot. To me, it's all about, you know, the ability to sustain an offense, to get wins, to make the plays when they need to happen and when they matter the most. And we haven't seen that from Jalen Hurts. To me, that's what I need to see. If there's 2 minutes left, we're down by 3, we're down by 6, whatever, put whatever points you want on the board. We need a field goal or we need a touchdown. Can Jalen Hurts do it? And I mean, you know, in certain circumstances, that's not always going to happen. We get it. They're not always going to be able to do that. They're going to miss. And if they get that chance 5 times, they miss once or twice. That's fine. But Jalen Hurts really hasn't presented that to us at all as a starting quarterback. And we need to be able to trust that, and trust that, like, in 2 minutes, you have to be able to throw the ball. That's not where you can lean on a 56% running offense. You need to be able to throw the ball. So that's the type of progress I want to see from Jalen Hurts. And the report, you know, I take it with a grain of salt. It is what it is. Like you said, who was actually there, who was catching the ball, who who was playing on defense, what types of play calls were being called. We don't know. There's so many different things. What's going to start to matter is training camp when there's media around and you really are, and the pads are on and you're starting to see these guys go and he's looking like the same or a regressed Jalen Hurts. That's when I'm going to sit there and say, okay, I'm worried. Okay, I'm nervous. That's when I would do that.
Just a one-word answer. Jalen Hurts, is he going to progress? Is he going to regress? Or will he be the same quarterback as last year?
Progress.
What do you think?
Progress.
I
don't think it's a big progression, though. Like I say progress, and I wish I could bracket slightly. I don't think he's going to progress to be this huge, take this massive leap forward. And I think that he's going to leave them with a decision again next offseason.
Yeah, which is a tough position to be put in.
Exactly. But hopefully it's enough that they can say, we can go with this guy.
I think
but then you got to pay. That's the thing. Then you got to pay.
I think he's going to be the same quarterback. Right now, that's my feelings. Obviously, things can change. But right now, I think Jalen Hurts is going to be the same quarterback. And you talked about how this team made a lot of moves. They made one move on the offensive side of the ball, and that was A.J. Brown. That could be enough for the offense. You're going to have Devontae Smith going up against number 2 cornerbacks. Obviously, most of the changes were on the defensive side of the ball, which we're going to talk about next week. So that's going to be the fun thing is seeing how Jonathan Gannon is going to be able to play with all those new toys. All right, so we both have the same 3 quarterbacks. Let's move to running back. I'll start us off. I think the 2 locks are Miles Sanders and Kenny Gainwell right now. When it comes to Sanders, I don't think the Eagles are going to give him a contract extension. I don't know if they like him. I don't think this coaching staff likes him. He's injury prone. With the offensive line, he led for running backs. I'm pretty sure he led I feel like he led the league in yards per carry because he didn't get touched till he was 5 yards down the field. But he scored 0 touchdowns last year. And again, a lot of that had to do with Jalen Hurts. If they're going to run an RPO, Jalen pulls it, runs it himself. But it's shocking that the running back had 0 rushing touchdowns. I'm only going with three running backs. And my third one, undrafted rookie free agent, Kennedy Brooks. He's going to take over the Jordan Howard role, I think. He has a chance to be a bruiser. I know I left Boston Scott, who they love, but I'm not a Boston Scott fan. Jason Huntley, who could potentially return kicks. It is what it is. But I'm going to go with Miles Sanders, Kenny Gainwell, who they like, who they can put into the slot, who they can move all over the field, can catch the ball at the backfield, might not be that in-between runner, but that's where you got Kennedy Brooks. So I'm going Sanders, Gainwell, and Kennedy Brooks in the Eagles' backfield.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, except I have them keep him forward because Boston Scott is Boston Scott, and the love and adoration that the past coaching staff has had and this coaching staff has for him. It's this odd infatuation, and they just can't cut him. But it's not like Jalen Reagor. It's different. It's like Jalen Reagor. It's like the first round capital. They don't want to cut that. It is what it is. But then it's like Boston Scott. It's this weird infatuation with his success. The success that he has in New York. That's it. In New York, that's the only spot that he can actually have success. But I got Sanders, obviously. I don't think they're giving him an extension either. I think there's so many free agent running backs next season. It's a great running back class for the draft. They're going to move on. Whether it's sign a free agent, draft one, they're going to move on. It just makes most sense, especially the way that certain running backs are getting paid now. Somebody else might pay for Sanders. It's a shame. There's a part of me that feels like injuries play a massive factor into his inability to be what we wanted him to be. But that yards per carry and being number 1 in the league, like the last 2 seasons, like having 5.5 yards per carry is insane. He's so good with getting the yards you need. If you need 3, he's going to get you 6 to 10. But you just
he dances too much.
He dances a lot. Yeah,
he tries to be shady.
And you just don't know, if he's going to go down, if he's going to get injured, because sometimes you watch him and he'll go 1 yard, 2 yard, 1 yard, negative, and then bust off a 25-yard run, and that blows the whole stats up. But Kenneth Gainwell, too, I think Kenneth Gainwell takes a big step forward this season. I think he's a great receiving back. And last year I talked about him being more of a receiving back and not being that great, watching some of the film last year that he wasn't that great, his vision wasn't that great and stuff. But then you see some times where you're like, he can definitely step up. He can be that guy, especially if Miles Sanders gets hurt. So And then Boston Scott, I got to give it to Boston Scott. Jason Huntley, he only would have a job if he kills it on punt returns. He has to kill it on punt returns and show that he is the guy, has to be the guy, which I think that there's other guys, other names that they'll be looking at. And Kennedy Brooks, I agree with you. Kennedy Brooks, we don't have that pound the ball bruiser back that we had last year. And I know that some people want to bring Jordan Howard back, but I agree with you. Kennedy Brooks is cheaper, and he can probably be equally, if not more effective than Jordan Howard.
Yeah.
So why not just roll with the cheapest option?
Yeah, and looking at one of the Randall to handle, A.J. Brown, he's very significant. Zach Pascal, third receiver. Grant Calcaterra, if he can come back from his he was good at SMU after, retiring from football with Oklahoma. Cam Jurgens could be the right guard. You never know. We're going to talk about Covey and Allen when we get to the receivers. I think it's going to be really tough for them to make. Allen hasn't played football since 2016, and playing football is a lot different than running the 110-meter hurdles. While he's a hell of an athlete, it's going to be, you got to throw pads on.
I think what we should specify, Randall, is they didn't make any significant.
Exactly. If you look at the defensive side of the ball, Hassan Reddick, Jordan Davis, N'Kobe Dean, James Bradbury, they made significant signings for the defensive side of the ball because they needed to. The offensive side of the ball,
Cam Jurgens was a need. Cam Jurgens had to happen, and you can argue he's a big move, but he's a big move for
that he doesn't play this year. There's a potential that Jurgens doesn't. He's going to make the team, obviously, center of the future. There's potential that Jurgens doesn't see the field. Obviously, if they need him at right guard and he goes there and does what Dickerson did at left guard last year, great. I love the move. And I'm not saying it was a bad draft because you need a replacement for Kelsey. Kelsey's got 1 year left. Maybe. I feel like that every time we say that, he comes back.
I feel like he's way past due. He just keeps coming back because he's like, okay, get it right.
He also said he loves playing for Coach Sirianni. Like, he loves it. So if he still has it, great. I guess you're right. You're right, Connor. I should have said, the significant signings that could potentially boost this team from a wild card team to a division winner are on the defensive side of the ball. All right, so let's move to wide receiver. And we're probably going to have some differences here, so I'll let you go first, Connor.
At this very moment, I have 5. I think it makes the most sense to keep 5. And I have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Zach Pascal, Quez Watkins, and Britton Covey. I know that we probably have a difference of opinion on Britton Covey, but my big thing is, and it's the same reason that I think, and we'll talk about safety next week, it's the same reason that I think Kevon Wallace shouldn't make the team, but what's his face? The other one there, Andre Chichere should. If you can bring something to special teams that sets the special teams apart, you have to be on the team, because our special teams has regressed year over year. And you need the answer. And one of the biggest question marks last year was we had nobody we could trust to return the football. The only one who could ever get us yardage was Jason Huntley. And then there was Jalen, but they always forced Jalen Reagor out there. And Jalen Reagor was just so bad. He was so putrid. We know that. We talked about it, especially in that Bucs game where he had the 2 where he muffed the punt 2 times, 3 times. Britton Covey can be the answer, and he can be a really good slot wide receiver when you need to call on him. And he did a lot in his college career. He came out of the backfield. He was a returner. He averaged over 100 all-purpose yards per game in college. To me, that just stands out so much. And I know Randall spoke about Devin Allen, and I want to say this. They picked up a lot of guys just to compete and to potentially open up that possibility of a 6th wide receiver making the roster. If Devin Allen shows out immensely, but then sure. But I would take Deion Kane. I would give the shot to Deion Kane before I gave it to Devin Allen. I would a lot of these guys are likely going to end up on the practice squad. I think they keep 2 or 3 wide receivers for the practice squad. But The shocker left off is Jalen Becker, and that's because he has to have the biggest training camp, biggest preseason you have ever seen from a player. And if they decide to keep him, and only because of the first round draft capital invested in him, and he didn't really do much or improve much in the offseason, I would be so disappointed, especially if he was like the sixth guy. You're going to waste that roster spot on having a 6 wide receiver and just trying to give this man a chance. I'd be so disappointed. But I got 5 wide receivers, and mostly for the fact that A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and Quez Watkins should play, all of them 50% or more, 60% or more even. Like, none of these other guys should see the field except for injury or special teams.
Yeah, so the first 4, I got the same as you. I have A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Zach Pascal, and Quez Watkins. I actually have the Eagles keeping 6. I do, unfortunately, have them keeping Jalen Reagor. I don't want them to keep Jalen Reagor, but I think, and I've been thinking about it more, like I didn't want to put him on the team, but it's more of the draft capital thing. I hate that that it's going to come down to that. And the 6th one I have is, and it's the same reason that you have Boston Scott, as I have Greg Ward. They love Greg Ward. What did they? I felt like in the red zone last year, every time they were in the red zone, they were trying to force feed him the football. So I have. It looks exactly like last year's receiving course with the addition of A.J. Brown. So Britton Covey, I'm intrigued by him, but and that 5'8" thing just bothers me, I think. Because I know that he'll only make the team to be a returner, but he gets hit once. And this isn't the Pac-12. Look, I know he did it. He had a kickoff return against Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. But look, this isn't the Pac-12. Like, the chances of him actually being able to return, I think he'll be on the practice squad. And like you said, I think they keep 2 receivers, Deion Kane and Britton Covey, on the practice squad. I really like Deion Kane a lot, and I think he has a chance to make a name for himself and potentially sneak onto the roster. But it'd be tough, just because with just some of the assets that have been allocated to this receiver position. But Kane could be on the practice squad and has a chance to make the team next year, because there's not going to be a Jalen Reagor next year. There's not going to be a Greg Ward next year. And look, if you compare them, and if you were to take the name and the jersey number off the back, and I think you looked at them out in the field, Deion Kane will look better than Jalen Reagor. Deion Kane is going to look better than Greg Ward. But they don't make the decisions like that. They when they make the decisions, they unfortunately, a lot of GMs think, we spent a first-round pick on them, we can't really give them up. But I'm going to say this, there's a potential that they could trade Jalen Reagor. There could be a team that thinks that has a guy that needs a change of scenery, just like Jalen Reagor needs a change of scenery. And maybe obviously there'll be other things in it, but that you make a trade. So Reagor's going to be on the team, but he's not going to be out there for 700+ snaps this season.
And nor should he return
if he is, we're
a
in trouble,
football.
because that means A.J. Brown's got hurt, Devonta Smith got hurt. Like, that's injuries that we cannot expect, or that we're hoping not to expect today. Because he's 5'8", you'd rather see. I wouldn't rather see Reagor, but I'm thinking like the Eagles. The Eagles, they look. I know, and you also have to think how many times. And obviously when Jalen Reagor, I was at the Eagles-Jets game, and Reagor let a ball bounce at the 2-yard line. It didn't go into the end zone. He thought it was. But how many – can you look this up real quick, Connor? How many times did the Eagles actually return a kick last year?
I'll go take a look.
We'll see. It'll be tough. I just think it'll be tough for Britton Covey to make the team. I do. And I'm thinking like the Eagles are thinking right now. And, I was listening to Ike Reese, and Ike Reese doesn't have high expectations of Britton Covey, making – and that's a former professional football player who excelled on special teams. And I look, again, NFL speed, way different than Pac-12 speed. You can be successful in the Pac-12. We saw, Nelson Aguilar was pretty good in the Pac-12, and it took him until his 4th or 5th year to make a name. Well, I don't know if I wouldn't say he really made a name for himself, but he was the best receiver in the Super Bowl for the Eagles. It took a while. So we'll see. I just don't know if Britton Covey's going to make the team, but I do think he'll make it on the practice squad. And if I'm not mistaken, they can call up people from the practice squad, right? Maybe he's a practice squad call up the return kicks. You never know.
I see 33 punt returns that they actually returns? Physically return.
Or is that kickoff returns?
Kickoff returns was 34, so you have 67 total returns.
So 2 a game for kickoff returns?
But see, Britton Covey would be more used in the punt return game. I don't think you'd put him out there on the kick returns. It just
I would put Kenny and if this is I would put Gainwell back for one of them. I don't know whether it's a punt return or kick
when you
return.
look at the breakdown, so on the punt returns, Reagor returned 31 and Ward returned 2. But then on kick returns, it shifts. Like Reagor had 12, Kenneth Gainwell had 8, Quez Watkins 8, Jason Huntley 3, and then 3 guys with 1. Like kick return, it's not about kick return, it's more about punt return for me, because that was where we lost a lot of yards that we could have had. And it was just really frustrating and really disappointing. And we used to pride ourselves on our special teams. We used to be top 3 in the league.
And this is early 2000s, obviously, but when John Harbaugh was the coach, like it was like under Andy Reid, they definitely made sure that special teams, and it's hard now because you have an hour and a half practices. Like you're trying to put your offensive game plan in, you're trying to put your defensive game plan in. It leaves 10 minutes for special teams. Like the NFL as a whole, I think, doesn't appreciate special teams anymore. That's why the NFL is trying to get rid of kickoffs. If they could get rid of punts, they would get rid of punts too. That's why they don't want to worry about the special teams aspect of it, minus kicking field goals. It makes somebody like a Britton Covey who could have a really good NFL career as a punt returner or as a kick returner, it makes them obsolete.
Definitely makes him obsolete, but at the end of the day, he can also be a guy who comes out, does what, like you can use him like you tried to use Jalen Becker on the end arounds and stuff like that. I get his size can be a factor, but like there's so many guys coming up through the ranks now that are smaller. Like the big ass wide receiver isn't necessarily working out like he used to. There's a lot of smaller wide receivers. Look at the weights of a lot of these guys who came out of this wide receiving class. None of them were over 200 pounds. These guys are all small. Size is but a number in the NFL now if you are able to functionally work them into your game plan. No, they weren't 5'8".
I hate to go back to the 5'8" thing, but when somebody says they're 5'8" and as an athlete, they're really smaller than that. So he's probably 5'6", 5'7". We'll see. And then I just don't want to see Reagor out there on punts anymore, letting everything bounce and running backwards. I 100% agree with that. I'm not saying Reagor should be the punt or kick returner. I'm just saying it's going to be tough for Covey to make the team. But,
my only issue on that front is like if you keep Jalen Becker, you basically have to put him there because who else are you gonna put there? Like that's the issue that I'm starting. Like I struggle.
Sproles was bulky, Dave. Sproles was bulky. Covey ain't bulky. I get it.
That's the issue that I have. Like, if you bring Jalen Becker back, you almost are essentially pigeonholing yourself as Jalen Becker and Boston Scott and Greg Ward are the combination of returners that you have, which have been extremely ineffective for 2 years now already. So,
I just don't think the Eagles and I'm focusing on the Eagles. I don't think they care about special teams. I really don't. I really don't think they care. They want to get off the field. Or they want to, they'll take the ball. And obviously it would help because if you get a shorter field for Jalen Hurts, the offense is going to put up more points and the offense will look better. I think the defense having more athletes, with some of the guys that they've signed, is going to help the offense. You're right. They do need to have somebody that can catch the ball and not let it bounce 15, 20 yards inside the 10. As of right now, and this is where us not seeing anything in this offseason, and hopefully we see something come, we're less than a month away, I think, or about a month away from the first preseason game. Hopefully we see something. But I don't know. This is the receiver position is going to be the position to keep an eye on all training camp because the first 4, I think, are set. Beyond that, do they keep 5? Do they keep 6? Do they go with
I just don't think it'll be like I don't think it'll be a huge shocker. Like, I think the people holding out hope that Devin Allen makes the team and that his track speed is reason to bring him in. Like, I don't think you should expect them
anything,
to
he'll be
go
on the
way
practice
off
squad.
the deep end with the move. Like, I think Jalen Becker has a better chance of being on this team next year as a 6th receiver than Devin Allen has a chance at being a 7th or 8th receiver on this team.
Yeah, they don't
It's
keep
just
7
the
or 8.
reality.
I don't think they keep 7 or 8.
No,
It's going to be 5 or
max
6.
6. It's 6 is the max. And like, if I should say this, if I were keeping a 6th, I had Greg Ward. I had Braden Covey, I had Greg Ward. I didn't have Jalen Becker, but I know where you're coming from. And this is like you with the Boston Scott. Like you said, you don't want to accept the reality that Boston Scott's likely on the team next year. And I don't want to accept the reality that Jalen Becker is likely on this team next year.
Yeah. All right, so let's move to the next position. We're going to go to tight end. Think this may be pretty easy. Dallas Goedert finally gets to start the season as the number 1 guy. He was a top 7 tight end when he started as the number 2 for the first half of the year. So he's gonna. I think he has a chance with AJ Brown, with Devontae Smith on the outside. The middle of the field has a chance to be wide open. Can the quarterback hit him? We'll see. My other 2 and I have him keeping 3 tight ends. And Tyree Jackson's going to start he's going to start the year on PUP, so he won't be on the active roster. I'm going to go Jack Stahl and Grant Calcaterra. I'm not a big Jack Stahl fan, but again, Tyree Jackson's not going to be ready to start the year. And I don't want JJ Arcega-Whiteside on this team as a tight end, so I automatically got rid of him. But yeah, so Jack Stahl and Grant Calcaterra has a chance. He played with Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma, so they kind of have a repertoire together. So we'll see. He eventually will become the number 2 tight end, I believe. So once Grant Calcaterra gets the offense down, you'll see him out there more. But the Eagles, and depending on what happens with the quarterback, if the quarterback can't throw, the Eagles are going to do a lot of 3 tight end sets. Unfortunately, that's taking another receiver off the field, though, and they're going to run the ball a lot again. But we don't want to see that. We're sitting here thinking the Eagles are going to be Jalen Hurts is going to be able to throw the football this year. This is what I'm thinking with putting this roster together. So I'm going to go Dallas Goedert, Jack Stahl, and Grant Calcaterra.
Yeah, I completely agree with your list. I mean, the only thing that scares me about Grant Calcaterra is that what some people don't realize is he retired due to concussion problems. That concerns me so much. Like, he has like potentially like a Jordan Reed-esque type situation on our hands. If he starts getting concussions, if he starts getting injured, and it has nothing to do with like an injury history. It's concussions, man. And they're so scary. Once they're there, once they start to have been kind of embedded in your life, it becomes an issue. And I really hope that it doesn't become an issue in the NFL, because he is really effective. He was extremely effective as a receiving tight end, decent blocking tight end. Jack Stoll, I agree. I think that the Eagles like Jack Stoll more than they're going to lead on, because he was pretty effective for them. He can go out there. He's not the greatest blocker, but he's a decent blocker. He's not the best catcher, but he's a decent catcher. Like, he is like the middle. He's like a middling type of tight end, but he's better than JJ Arcega-Whiteside. He's better than still fairly raw Tyree Jackson. Like, he's still better than both of those all options. So Jack Stoll to me would make a perfect tight end 3, and then Dallas Goedert, well, obviously that's a no-brainer.
Dallas Goedert's going to be a top 5 tight end this year, I think.
And I think Grant Calcaterra, like you said, he can easily be a guy who makes 25, 30 catches and goes off for, 300, 400, 500 yards. And as minuscule as that sounds, that's a big role in this offense when you consider the 4 guys who are going to be catching balls or getting more yardage ahead of them. So,
yeah, so we agree on the tight end. And let's go to the strength of this football team, the offensive line. The Eagles' second unit has a chance to be better than a lot of teams' first units. That's how crazy the depth on the offensive line is for the Philadelphia Eagles. Some guys that can make this that can have a chance to make other teams, like they're going to make the Eagles are going to cut. This doesn't include a Nate Herbig, who the Eagles probably should have kept as depth. He's on the Jets, obviously. They got rid of him. So who do you have? And I think we both have 10. Maybe you have less. I have 10. Who do you have? How many offensive linemen do you have the Eagles keeping? And who are they?
I have 10. I hope Andre Dillard gets moved. I really think that there's a lot of value to moving Andre Dillard versus keeping him on this team, because when push comes to shove, his contract's coming up eventually. You're not going to bring him back. He won't come back.
Yeah.
You know he's not coming back. So at this point, if the difference is how he wants a second and someone's willing to give a third, you take the third. At this point, based on a lot of the rumors about trades that Howie was trying to jig, he probably was asking at a very firm price that he would not waver on. And the difference between his price and the actual final offer of teams probably wasn't as much as we think. It probably wasn't that bad. It's just Howie was stuck on I want what I want and I'm going to get what I want. And now we're sitting here with Jalen Becker, who was apparently part of negotiations. We're sitting here with Andre Dillard, who's been the focal point of negotiations with for teams that have need at the offensive line position. Like, these are guys who should have been moved, who should not be here if there was any respectable offer on the table.
And I think Howie's also could be doing what he did with Sam Bradford. Just wait. If an injury happens, the team's going to come calling and give you what you want. And it doesn't hurt to have him as a depth, have him as your backup left tackle for the year. Like,
agreed.
It doesn't hurt to have somebody who, while we're down on him, as long as it's at left tackle, he shouldn't be that bad. You know what I mean?
I'm not down on him as a left tackle. I'm down on, like, when they asked him to try and move to right tackle, it was like an outright no. Like, he's not willing to be a part of.
He saw what it looked like
at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, he's depth to this offensive line. He's just another piece of the cog that goes. And there's so many guys who can play 3 to 5 positions on this offensive line, and this guy's stuck at one position, and it's a position of need for many teams. So I'm hoping, but for now he's on the team. Obviously he's on the team. Andre Dillard's there. So left side, I got Jordan Mailata, I got Andre Dillard, I got Landon Dickerson, I got Sua Opeta coming because he just offers such great versatility. You can't deny the versatility. He can play pretty much all 5 positions if you need him. Effectively, not really, but that's why he's a backup. Jason Kelsey, Cam Jurgens. I might end up with 11 guys. Isaac Seumalo, Jack Anderson. I kind of wish I had to move Seumalo. I love Jack Anderson. That mentality that he has, he's got such a dog mentality. You do not want to go one-on-one with that man. And we saw it in those games where the starters sat, or when the opportunities came where the starters sat or there was an injury. He's a bully. The dude's a bully, and I really like him. I think he can be really effective as a center or as a right guard backup. And then Lane Johnson, Jack Driscoll, and I'm really on the fence about LaRaven Clark. They paid the guy. Like, I almost am stuck thinking that contract keeps LaRaven Clark around, and LaRaven Clark can be used on the right side, right tackle, right guard, whatever you want. I think at the end of the day, there's going to be 10. But something's going to happen here. There's going to be a trade. There's going to be an injury. Something's going to give that takes my 11 to 10. But at this point, I can picture 11 for that reason.
Yeah. So pretty much have the same as you. My starters, Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Jason Kelsey. I have Isaac Seumalo at right guard right now and Lane Johnson. There's my starting 5. My backups, Cam Jurgens, Sua Opeta, Jack Driscoll, Andre Dillard with the potential, again, him and Jalen Becker in the same boat, potentially to be traded, and LaRaven Clark. If Andre Dillard gets traded, Jack Anderson is there. There's still potential that Jack Anderson could be there, but I have these 10 right now. And like I mentioned, that second group is almost as good as some teams' starters. It's crazy, like I mentioned before we started this position group, just the depth along this offensive line. And the Eagles were able to just keep it together for the most part. And again, like, imagine if Nate Herbig was still on the roster. So
that would just be insane. Like, then I'd probably be cutting Sua Opeta because like, that's just crazy. And then you can 100% say your backups are better than probably 16 other teams starters. Like, just so if I just wish Jack Driscoll could be healthier. That's one of my wishes, so that he could compete, because I think he is better than Isaac Seumalo. I think he is a better right guard than Isaac Seumalo, but I think injuries are going to push him back, and the money that is tied up in Isaac Seumalo are going to make him a backup. And it just sucks because he's a good, whether it's a tackle or a guard, he can own that right side of the line. He just can't stay healthy, and it breaks my heart that he can't.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And then when it comes to Andre Dillard, I think Howie's just holding on to him, an injury in camp. Somebody calls him up, hey, can we get Andre Dillard? We'll make a deal. and boom, a deal
I
gets
think my
made.
scenario is it's not an injury. It's going to be someone realizes, man, we held out on left tackle because we thought this guy could do something, and their left tackle turns out to be shit. That's
Same
how
thing.
that's what I think
Same
ends
thing.
up happening.
Either an injury or just a terrible performance by the current left tackle.
Because
It's
I
the
see
same.
some left tackles and I'm like, man, you could really use Andre Dillard and like, day 2 pick, like a 3rd rounder. Why not? Right?
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But like, so our offensive depth chart looks very similar. Obviously, you have Boston Scott. I have Rager and Ward. You don't. You have Covey. Same tight ends, pretty much the same offensive line. And then you have Jack Anderson, and I would love to put Jack Anderson in there. We'll see. I think he has a very, very good shot at making the team. But again, when you look at this offense, besides, A.J. Brown, Kennedy Brooks, who, he's an undrafted free agent. I don't know how much play he'll get early on. Like in preseason, he's going to get a lot of play. Like he's going to be the bell cow, I think, in the preseason because you want to see what you have with him. But like when the season actually starts, it's going to be Miles Sanders. It's going to be Kenny Gainwell.
It just depends on how they roll with the offense. If they
Well,
start out
they're going
and
to come
they
out throwing the
lead,
football. They're going to come out throwing the football.
I hope you're right, because if they come out and they're running, then you're going to see a lot of Kennedy Brooks, and I'm scared. I'd be petrified of what this team ends up doing. Listen, at the end of the day, you can be run centric. I'm not saying you can't be run centric, but to the tune of like a 55 to 45% share between pass and run and pass, like we were last season. Like you said, when you come toe to toe with a team like the Bucs and Tom Brady, they went up 3 scores and we were buried because we couldn't do anything, because we didn't have an effective passing game, and you can only lean on the run game to go behind by so many scores.
And Tampa came into that game saying the run game is not going to beat us. And like you just said, when they got up big early, it was over because Jalen missed Quez on a play. He threw the ball late to Devontae Smith that got picked off in the end zone late in the second quarter. That can't happen, But I think the goal for this year is they win the division to get a home playoff game. Because anything beyond, like, if you can win the division and you can host the game at the Link, you're hosting a wild card team. So while wild card teams has the potential to be better because usually the division isn't good. So like you're going to be the number 4 seed most likely. You're not. I don't think the Eagles are going to be good enough to challenge for the number 1 seed to get a bye. But I think they'll be at 3 or 4, and who knows what happens there. But you want to get that home playoff game. So, you don't want to have to go on the road to Tampa. You don't want to have to go on the road to Tampa, Green Bay, LA. Like you're not winning those games on the road.
Sadly, I agree. Like you need that the advantage is the Link. Yeah. You get that home field even for 1 week, and that's all you need to get the guys like hyped up. And then if you have to go off and play in LA or Green Bay or whatever, you're feeling better about yourself than you would have if you walk in like we did last year. You walk into Tampa Bay and you just get hosed by the team because you just weren't prepared. You're just not up to that level yet. It was such an ugly game. It was such an ugly performance, that game. And I want to bury it in the rear view like we've been trying to, but you just can't help but think about it, especially when talking about Jalen Hurts. That was an opportunity to prove you can be a passer. I can be a passer. I can stand toe-to-toe with Tom Brady or whatever offense I'm put against, and I can put points.
He was also hurt. He was hurt. Because he came after that game, he went into the interview like he had a boot on his foot. So like he wasn't the scram. He wasn't doing what he did early in the season. He wasn't moving around. So that had impact. I will say one thing. We get to September 11th. I think that's the first game against Detroit. And this offense can't throw the football. We're in trouble because Detroit's not going to be good this year. I don't think Detroit's going to be good. If you can't throw the football against that team, oh man, wait until we have a show that week because it's going to not even just our show. I'm talking about sports radio in Philly. Just Jalen better hope that they're able to throw the ball.
I want to say one thing. Sports radio is going to be ripping Jalen no matter what happens week 1. I can almost guarantee it.
No, because
Their ability to give the dude a chance is so. I don't even live in Philly, and I see people tweeting about it, and I know they're not giving him the time of day.
I think it's more of a. No, look, they're going to give him. It stinks though because we haven't seen him, and we're not going to see him this preseason. He is not playing a preseason game this year, and if he
Nor
does,
should he.
If he does, it's one series. It's going to be the Gardner Minshew Carson Strong show. That's what it's going to be. This, and you're not going to see Devontae Smith. You're not going to see AJ Brown. You're not going to see Dallas Goedert. You're not going to see the starting offense. You're not going to see anybody, and that's the thing that's gonna be worrisome for me. It's because I want to see these guys. Because we haven't seen them since the playoff game. The last taste in our mouth is that playoff game, and we're not going to see them in preseason. And their first action together is going to be in week 1 in Detroit. And while Detroit is not a good team, they play tough for that coach. It does not matter the circumstances. They play tough.
They go for kneecaps.
Especially what we did to them last year, rushing for 400 yards, but it felt like it was like 300 or whatever. They're not going to want that to happen again. You better be able to come out. You need to come out and jump on Detroit. And if you can't do that, that Monday morning, that next day, it's going to be crazy.
I just know, there could be rust early on because they don't get the chance to play a whole lot together, like real in-game action. I get AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts are like best friends, and they probably practice like 7 days a week together. But that's not what an in-game circumstance is like. So to expect there not to be rest the first couple weeks, I mean, maybe, but as long as we see some things, we need to see things we like and not have flashbacks to the first 7 weeks last year where we couldn't win any games, all the close games we lost, or flashbacks to the Tampa Bay game where we saw no offense whatsoever. So, I mean, we just need to see progress.
The other thing I want to see, and it's going to be tough because on the schedule, there's not many good quarterbacks on it. You need to beat a team with a good quarterback. You lost all the games against a team with a good quarterback last year. That can't happen.
I think we lost all games to teams above 500. We're so bad.
If you want to win 10, 11, 12 games, you need to beat Dallas at least once. You're going to have to beat Matt Ryan and in Indianapolis. You're going to have to beat a good team. You're going to have to beat Green Bay, which I don't think is going to happen, but I think we play Green. I think that's an L. I'm gonna call it now. You can't keep beating up on the Detroit Lions. We get Minnesota week 2. While I am not the biggest fan of Kirk Cousins, he's a good quarterback. They got a good set of receivers. That's Monday night in Philly, week 2. You have to win that game. You don't look, even if you beat Detroit and don't look good, and then you come back to Philly and Monday Night Football the next week and get buried or get beat by Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. There's going to be a lot of talk. And I get it. It's going to be like, well, it's early. No, we need to see progress. I think we need to see progress right away because this team is built to win the division. And it's going to come down to the quarterback, obviously. It always comes down to the quarterback, and it's going to come down to Jalen Hurts. And obviously expectations are high. The expectations are high, and when the Eagles have high expectations, they usually struggle. And as Dave said, all the quarterbacks last year that have some skill, they all look like Hall of Famers against us. Dude, up through that, was it the Oakland game? It felt like the Eagles defense was giving up 80% completion percentage. That can't happen. That cannot happen again. They had an all-time bad defense against the pass the first half of the year last year.
And that's why next week's episode is going to be even funner to talk about because that's where there was a lot of game-changing moves made so that Derek Carr doesn't look like a Hall of Famer against us because I think he had one of the highest completion percentages in NFL history that week against us.
Didn't he have 2 incompletions that game?
Yeah, it was he completed it was over 80%. It was insane. I think it was 92%. It was ridiculous. It
was crazy. But yeah, so that's what our offense looks like. It's going to look different come week 1. Can 100% guarantee that. Neither of us is going to be correct. But it is fun to finally get back talking to Philadelphia Eagles. As Connor mentioned, next week we talk the defensive side of the football. And like you said, Connor, that's where all the significant moves were made. Finally get some linebackers in here, get a second cornerback opposite of Darius Slay. I think the weakness on kind of my quick preview, the weakness is probably the same. Well, it's always linebacker, but I think they actually have players at linebacker. Safety, I think, is going to be where the weakness is. There should be some intrigue in who we both decide to keep.
And then I believe they open training camp on the 29th, right?
They open up on the
27th or 29th.
I thought it was the 25th they report, which is next Monday.
Oh, well, even better.
Because
then we hope that we have this one last show that we're all speculating stuff, and then we start to see training camp and we start to see reports, and then we can really get down and dirty to what is going on with the Philadelphia Eagles this season.
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure they report the 25th or 26th, which is Monday and Tuesday of next week. And then they finally will get on the field probably Wednesday or Thursday. Maybe. We'll see. But we are close. We're under 2 weeks away. That's all that matters of getting set for Philadelphia Eagles training camp. And then we'll get preseason games, and it's going to be fun. Finally, football's back, because this world that we live in where it's just MLB kind of sucks. Not going to lie. I can't watch it. Even though the Phillies are good, I can't sit there and watch a full game. Just can't do it. It's background noise to me. I need football. I need football in the worst way. But yeah, as always, thank you all for listening. You can follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. You can follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJRL54. Follow the Painted Lines on Twitter at the Painted Lines, and on YouTube, search the Painted Lines. If you are listening to us in podcast form, wherever you're listening to us, please rate and review the show. If there's anything you guys want us to talk about in upcoming episodes, please feel free to go to the Kelly Green Hour Twitter and DM us, and we'll do our best. We'll try to get some guests, maybe try to get a couple people on throughout training camp and preseason before we hit the regular season. I'm excited, Connor. I can't wait. Finally something to talk about. I know we enjoyed the time off, but we need to talk about football now.
We need football back. Do we ever?
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Kelly Green Hour.
You want Philly?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sanders patiently running. Sanders, good cut. And another block. Sanders still going.